This podcast is hosted on podhome.fm, the most modern podcast hosting platform. Podhome offers unlimited episodes and podcasts, and unlimited use of Podhome AI, which generates transcripts, clips, chapters, title suggestions, show notes, and much more. And all of that for just $15.99 a month or $185 per year. That's a steal. So go to podhome.fm and start your 30-day trial now. And enjoy the show with Joe.
Transmitting live from the Asylum Studios, deep in the bowels of Southwest Texas. It's the Joe Rooz Show. The show where we talk about anything and everything. Where nothing is sacred, nothing is watered down, and nothing is PC.
All righty. Hey, folks. It is Tuesday, the 10th of March, 2026. I am Joe Rooz, and it is great to be with you guys once again, transmitting live tonight at the Asylum, and of course doing the very best we can to bring you the best quality talk radio we can muster without all the bluster. Welcome to the Joe Rooz Show. All right, well, it's been a busy day, so I am hoping that all my show prep is good. I was kind of looking through it a little while ago, and I think I got it. I was talking to the guest prior to starting the show here. There is a name of a book, but I know I'm going to destroy it, so I ask for forgiveness now. All right. And the reason why I'm bringing it up right now is because while the music is playing, I was replaying it in my head, the name of the book, and I destroyed it. So we'll figure all that stuff out when we get to that particular point. Man, just hope you guys were able to check out the show last night. We had a really great conversation with Eric Fisher. Again, a quality guest from Creative Edge Publicity. So, and tonight, no different. We have Trevor Harrison waiting in the background for us, also from Creative Edge. And look, you know, I'm going to tell you, the folks at Creative Edge, I love you guys. I really do. You make it so easy and so stress-free. It's amazing because you guys actually answer your emails. You guys actually check in, before the show starts. So it's great. I love it. I love it. I love it. Too many times we've been left in the lurch, the guest not showing up. But we're not going to, we talked about that at length yesterday, so we're not going to spend too much time there. At any rate, we have a really good show here for you tonight. We're going to be talking about quite some interesting things because, you know, across the Western world, people are losing trust in institutions. Political anger is rising. The word populism is absolutely everywhere in the headlines. You hear it all over the place. But the question is, what does it actually mean? Now, tonight, we have Dr. Trevor Harrison joining us. He's a sociologist who spent decades studying political movements, nationalism, and the growing divide between elites and everyday citizens. Why do populist movements emerge? And why do the political class so often absolutely misunderstand them? We're going to look at those things tonight. But before we get into it, just a little bit of the housekeeping stuff that we usually do. So, folks, please don't forget to head over to our website, joerooz.com, joerooz.com, and that's R-O-O-Z, doing that for the transcriber, all right, because they always spell it R-U-S-E for some reason, like Rooz, but Joe Rooz, R-O-O-Z. Head over to the website and go up in the upper right corner. You're going to see a little pancake there. Open up that contact form. And send us over a message. Let us know whatever's on your heart, whatever's on your mind, any questions, comments, cares, concerns that you might have. Maybe you have a complaint. You shouldn't, but maybe you do. Maybe you have an idea for a guest or a particular topic you'd like us to discuss. Let us know what you're thinking. We would love to hear from you. Also, you could use the email address. I forgot where I was going with it for a second. I'm sorry. You can use the email address if you don't like to use the web form, which is fine. I don't like using web forms too much either because of the CAPTCHA that drives me crazy. You put a little puzzle piece or click the crosswalks or whatever it might be. You do it 1,000 times. It keeps on telling you you're wrong. But whatever it is, if you want to use the email address, use the email address. That's fine. It's info@joerooz.com. That's info@joerooz.com. And you could also use the comment section right down there below on Rumble and on YouTube. We would love to hear from you guys. Love to see some comments in the sections down there. That's what they're there for, so use them. All right. Also, folks, please don't forget that this is a live show, weeknights at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we also have our Saturday show every other Saturday at noon Central Time, where we do our crypto predictions with our resident crypto psychic, Marissa Lee. And then, of course, we have our Sunday show, our Sunday Bible study show, every Sunday at 2 p.m. Central Time. So check them out. All these shows are backed up, so you can check them out in the past. And don't forget, we started a new series on Sundays. So you should, if you missed any of the last 3 or 4 shows, you should go back and check them out. They're all available there to you, so you can get caught up for this coming Sunday's show. Also, very, very important. Very, very important is to like, subscribe, and share the show with your friends, your family, and your followers. That way, you will help us to spread the joy, spread the love, and the absolute 100% perfect professionalism of this particular show. Yeah, the sarcasm is dripping tonight, folks. It is dripping. So, check out. So don't forget, please do that for us. Like, subscribe, and share with your friends, your family, and your followers. Seriously, it'll help with the algorithm. And listen, maybe you have that one particular person that you really want to annoy. If you share the show with them specifically, it'll keep popping up in their timeline. Really annoy them, right? So do that. Please do that. Somebody did that to me once. That's why I say it. So please do it. All right. So very important. Like, subscribe, and share. All right. Now, tonight's connection is brought to us, of course, by the great folks over at Creative Edge. Creative Edge, publicity at its finest for all creatives, your brand, your future. All right, let me just make one adjustment here and make sure we're good all around, and then I will bring in our guest here. Okay, it looks like we're okay. And let's bring him on in. Now tonight, like I said, we are joined by Dr. Trevor Harrison. He's a retired sociology professor from the University of Lethbridge in Canada and one of the leading researchers studying populism, nationalism, and political movements. Over the years, he's written or edited more than a dozen books looking at everything from right-wing populism to modern political polarization, another great word that you hear in the news quite a bit these days. He's also directed a major public policy institute. There's been a frequent voice in media explaining why people lose trust in institutions and why political anger keeps rising. Now, tonight, like I said, we're going to kind of dig into a little bit of populism. We're going to talk about why it keeps coming back and whether the political class actually understands the people that they claim to represent. Dr. Harrison, Trevor, thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Joe. Yes, wonderful to be here.
Fantastic. I'm glad you feel like that now. You might not feel like that later.
Oh, I'm sure I will. I feel pretty good most of the time.
All right. So, well, before we really get into the fun stuff for tonight, I'm going to ask you a couple of icebreaker questions like we always do. So this week's selection of icebreaker questions, the first one is, what is the most random skill that you have that almost never comes up in conversation? So the most random skill you have that almost never comes up in conversation.
I would have to say I might be the number one cribbage player in the entire world. But it's a dying art, and but if somebody wants to play me, hey, we can organize that. So sure.
Cribbage. I haven't heard that in a very, very long time. I think my great grandmother played cribbage.
My family was a bunch of card players. Every night was playing cards of some sort, but crib and yeah. Well, now the side part of that story is we have a grandson who's about to turn 8, so I started him at 5 at teaching him how to play poker. So every day we actually play a bit of poker. Today we started on 21 as well. So, but we're going to work on to cribbage. So yeah,
21's fun. I like
it's
21.
Fun.
I know more about 21 than I do cribbage. So
yeah.
That's great. All right. So what's the dumbest way you've ever hurt yourself?
Oh, gee, how much time are we on for? Several hours here?
It could be.
Okay, so I'm not the youngest person probably on your show at any time. So a few months ago, I decided that I was going to, for the first time in my life, become really buff, and I was going to start lifting all kinds of weights. I'm in generally pretty good shape, but I'm waiting now for an appointment to get a hernia operation. So that's the dumbest thing I've ever probably done. So,
Okay. Well, that's not that bad. That's not that bad.
well, yeah.
I told the story last night of how I dumped a whole pot of boiling water on my foot.
Oh,
Well, I did it to protect my dog. My dog was laying at my feet, and I was not aware that he was there. And so when I was scooting over from the stove to the sink to drain the pot, I bumped into him, and of course I jerked back, and the water up and out. And
hey,
yeah,
I have a small dog. I would do that same brave act. So you're a hero in my books.
well,
Okay.
thank you, sir. Thank you. I'm sure Charlie appreciated it too. I'm sure he didn't want to get his little butt scalded. So he's my little French bulldog, by the way. He's one of them. I have two. I have my boy and my girl, and they're the best thing in the world. So, and I was cooking for them, by the way. So
Dogs are the best people. So
yes, absolutely, I agree with that. Totally agree with that. Totally agree with it. So, so Trevor, before we get into the politics and the books and all that stuff, tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what pushed you toward studying sociology in the first place.
yeah, it's almost something you kind of fall into, I guess. So I grew up in a city north of here. Some people would have heard of it, Edmonton. It's the capital of the province here of Alberta. And I was always surrounded with picture books, places, you'd travel to, everything. I figured I wanted to travel when I was about 8. I just knew a map of the world. So before I ever went to university, I actually went traveling overseas a fair amount. One of the books I'm going to be coming out with is about traveling across the Middle East in the 1970s. And out of that experience, just seeing different people, going different places, being interested in why people did things. When I finally went back to university, in some sense, I think I'd already been groomed to become a sociologist, which is really kind of studying why people in groups, nations, communities, whatever, do what they do. And so I just kind of fell into it and created sort of a life out of that. And for 30 years or so was a professor at universities, got to travel a lot to interesting parts of the world, including some places in the United States. I actually spent 4 months in Georgia back in 2010,
Beautiful place.
at a time when actually populism in the States was really arising. If you think the Tea Party movement at that point, and so yeah, I all my research and everything is revolved around pretty much politics, people, populism, and in different countries around the world. So I've traveled a fair amount actually.
So you spent decades studying politics through sociology. So what originally made you interested in how societies organize themselves politically?
Yeah, I was always really interested in history. As I said, growing up, we had lots of books about, I studied wars like crazy. So by the time I was about 12, I could have given a pretty good lecture already about the First and Second World War. But one thing about you study wars is you're also studying people's behaviors, relationships. You also
Mhm.
learn a lot about geography, which if you're interested in traveling, that really helps. So I think it was really, for me as a sociologist, my sociology was kind of a combination of economics, politics, geography, history. Sociology kind of pulled together all of those different things, and I just kind of went from there.
Mm. Now your early research looked at populist movements in Canada.
Yeah.
Um, so tell us about the populist movements in Canada, because honestly, you know, uh, you don't really hear much about it here in the States. Is there really a thriving populist movement in Canada?
Yeah, there is actually in this province of Alberta where I am. There's a fairly long history of it going back to the even the 1930s. One of our governments at that time was very much elected on a platform of populism. I should say there's actually, the origins of populism actually comes out of the United States, comes out of the farmers, the great progressive movements of the late 19th century, William Jennings Bryan and all that. And so it was actually coined by a journalist at that time. And what populism basically refers to is a kind of political structure where a relationship between sort of the elites and the people. And it's always the people versus the elites. That's the basis of populism. The real question there, though, is who is a member of the people? How do you define who the people are? Is it on the basis of, could be race, religion, could be your region, and who actually belongs to the elites? So are they just rich people, or do they have other characteristics that signal them out as being, in some sense, a dominant group who is viewed as being opposed to the people? And that's where then the conflict enters into it, is one large movement that says this elite is somehow being, they're treating us badly, and they don't deserve to have the power that they have.
Okay, well, you answered my next question already, so I'm not gonna get to that one. But it should be understood, though, there is a difference between populism and nationalism.
Yep, they can overlap to a degree, but because you could say, well, the people really are the people who run this country, and now we're opposed to somebody else outside the country. Or maybe we're opposed to people who are coming into the country that we don't believe legitimately should be here. Okay, that's one part of the history of populism quite often, is it can be a kind of anti-immigrant thing. So what you see sometimes is when there's economic stresses in a community, the people who have lived there for a long period of time suddenly turn against new people coming in. So there is a little bit of a nationalist aspect to that as well.
So it can cross over one into the other.
It can, to some extent, yeah.
Is that a normal thing, or is that just something that or does it depend on circumstance?
Well, and one of the things I should say here, as I said, who belongs to the people is very much a kind of what sociologists like they call a social construct. Politicians have a lot to say about this. So politicians can actually do a lot in terms of constructing who are the people. And so they can give speeches saying, this is who the people really are, and these other people here aren't really legitimately part of our populace. They aren't really people in the community. And so they can go about saying, this group here, these immigrants, really shouldn't be recognized as being legitimate here, right? So again, recent immigrants coming in are always a kind of fair game for demagogues, particularly, to say, we're going to go after them because it's a great way of kind of rallying political support.
That kind of makes sense, I think, at least. But then again, and it can be used, I should say. It can be used for. I'm trying to think of how to phrase the question. It's see, this is what happens. Like I told you before the show. Sometimes the brain starts moving, the mouth don't.
Well, it's a very big topic. It's a complex topic.
It is. It very much is.
And so, as I said, we need to have a really good, honest, and thorough conversation again about that whole point. Is who are we talking about when we talk about the people? It's such a nebulous term, right? It's so abstract that you can throw almost some people into it and some people out of it. And as I said, it historically in Canada and the United States, it's varied according to religion, region, race, ethnicity. A whole bunch of things go into that construction.
But does it always circulate around immigration though? Because there's legal
No,
immigration, there's illegal immigration.
yeah. Doesn't always have to be. Sometimes, unfortunately, the groups that could be singled out as not belonging to the people, I get that term, they could be people who've actually lived there for a very long period of time.
Hmm.
So, for example, in our country, back in the late 1920s, in one province here, the Ku Klux Klan actually made some inroads into Saskatchewan. But there wasn't a large African population around. And so who's the group that suddenly was being targeted by some politicians? It was Catholics. Suddenly, who had probably lived in the community forever, but all of a sudden it was like, well, here's a good target to go after. So you could have groups of people who have lived there for decades and decades, several generations, that all of a sudden someone says, let's go after them because our economic misfortunes are because of this group, right? They could be
Right.
Jewish. They could be any kind of group out there.
And I guess you could also say that, one of the terms that I hate, to be honest with you, is that term elite,
Mm.
the elite class.
Yeah.
That irritates me to no end because
Yeah.
who's to say who the elite are and who the ordinary people are?
Yeah.
And then you hear comments like, that, like populism is a reaction to by the ordinary people because the elites are ignoring their concerns and their needs.
Yeah.
Do you think that's accurate?
Yeah, I think you've really nailed it, Joe. Because as much as I said the term "the people" is kind of a little confusing and abstract, so is the elite. So who are we talking about here? In a lot of cases, it's people who are particularly wealthy, but it could be because they have a certain status. Are professional basketball players? Are they members of the elite? Is it people who are actors in Hollywood? Are they part of the elite? So
Right.
it's a kind of movable target again. And so when we get talking about populism, we really need to put on our critical hat and say, well, who are we talking about? Who are these two groups that are somehow opposed to each other? Why do we think they're opposed to each other?
That's a great point. That's a great point. It also applies to in academia as well. We mentioned
Yeah.
actors and sports athletes and superstars and such. But it also applies to people that have a bunch of letters after their name. I've come across that quite a bit. That's not to disparage anything about people that that are educated and they work in any particular field and they have those letters after their name. That's not a disparaging mark about any of them. But there are those in that group that really take it to another level and believe that just because you have this, and again, I know you have your credentials, and this is not a comment regarding yourself or anything, but
Yeah.
it's just a blanket statement. They feel like just because they have a bunch of letters after their name that they can dictate every little thing that you say, think, or do.
Yep. Yeah, anytime you become part of some group, it's easy to sort of cut yourself off from others and not kind of maintain that kind of relationship or contact with other groups. You start to see the world through that prism of that group that you belong to. And, I think one failure of academics over the years sometimes is we haven't done a very good job of just remaining part of the community as a whole, right? And so you've got a degree or you're particularly good at particular skill, but there hopefully is more to you than that.
Yeah.
Right? Hopefully so I'm a professor, but I have a whole bunch of other hats that I can wear as well. So it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and there's also the issue of political polarization. We're seeing more of that. It seems like every election cycle it gets worse and worse. I know here in the States, I don't think I've ever seen I don't think I've ever seen this country so polarized politically as I see it right now. And what's it like in Canada for you?
It's not as bad. And I have to say, I mean, I certainly have studied the States, so I know something of what is going on there. But we see it up here as well. But I don't think it's got nearly as pronounced as in the States. And again, you see it in various countries around the world as well. Um, but it seems to me fairly bad in the United States. One of the things we have to keep in mind is quite often individuals talking to each other might be a lot closer than if, just on everyday level, than if they start talking politics. And quite often it's the parties themselves are most different from each other. So again, I said before that politicians have a lot to do with how people frame the conflicts, the arguments. I think that's very much part of the polarization is also party politics has created much of that conflict. And so I can't give great advice to the United States, but it does strike me that it behooves politicians to tone it down a little bit and look for ways to talk across those divides and not accentuate those divisions, right?
Oh,
Because
I agree
that's
with you.
dangerous.
I agree with you 100%. The way it's structured right now, and the arguments you see from both sides, there really isn't any common ground anymore.
Mhm.
They really neither side. I mean, I don't know if you saw the recent State of the Union address here in the States. I mean, it's the left right is so divided. They can't find common ground on anything, and it's disheartening and it's dangerous.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and I think this is one of the main reasons why, and our founding generation here in the States, our founding generation were so incredibly wise. These were very learned men, very, very well-studied men. They understood history. And if there's one thing that man doesn't learn from history is that man doesn't learn from history. You know, so
Yep.
they saw these things and they understood these things. They looked at the Roman form of government. They looked at British common law. They looked at all of these things and they tried to establish an organized government that was small enough to get things done, but not big enough to where it would be intrusive in everybody's lives the way it is today. They also warned against political parties.
Yep.
They were very adamant about political parties.
Yeah,
And
I think
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. As I said, I think political parties can either pull us together or they can accentuate visions. And lots of countries we see that actually at work. I've studied Greece a lot. I think a similar things going on in Britain right now.
Yes.
Um, Maybe what we have to think about is how is it that what is the incentive structures around parties? Because it seems to me the incentive structure is such that you dividing people gives you rewards as a politician, right? You get status,
True.
you get money, you get contacts that you can use after you leave politics,
Yeah.
and by sowing division, you increase your status again and your power. Maybe it's party politics again, as you said, the founding fathers were suggesting, is really at the root of a lot of these problems.
Yeah, I agree. And also career politicians are
Yep.
part of the main problem too, because you want to talk about polarization right there.
Oh, hey, I'll tell you, I write a lot of op-eds, and I've talked at various venues about this. A pox on career politicians. I mean, I can name, and we have a lot of the same thing. I could name any number of politicians in Canada who have never done anything in their life, but at 19 or 20, they get themselves tied in with a party organization.
Right.
They work the back rooms, they get themselves in a position, they get elected, and then they start spouting off on everything and they have this wonderful pension and they go on from there. And you look back on their career and you say, but did they actually ever do anything? Did they ever have a real job? Did they meet real people? And, so a pox on career politicians. And I know in the United States there's limits, of course, on the presidency. I think there should be limits on every kind of
Agreed.
position you can imagine, and not just simply going from, say, using the American example, you go from being a governor to a senator to something else. I mean, once you've done your 8 years, go do something else.
It's like they say, once you've done your bid for king and country, disappear.
Yeah.
Disappear.
Yeah.
Just
And,
I
and I
don't want
would
to hear
say
from
the
you
same
again.
thing here in Canada. I mean, we have too many people who are just, I think, career politicians, and it's not clear to me they've stayed in touch with regular people doing a decent job every day.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the like, for example, here in Texas, we have a Senate race going on here, and you have one particular candidate in John Cornyn, who's been, I think, he's been a senator for 25 years,
Mm.
and refuses to give up and refuses to step, even though he's not really serving the interest of his constituency.
Mhm.
There are a lot of things here in Texas that Texans want, but he's holding his breath and stomping his foot like a child because of whatever reason. It's ridiculous. And then I think back home in New York, you have guys like Chuck Schumer, who've been in 40, 50 years. They started right at, like you said, coming
Yep.
right out of college. They get that internship in somebody's office, and they just linger. They don't do anything. And the one thing about Chuck Schumer that we used to always say in New York was that you knew it was election season because anywhere there was a camera, there was Chuck Schumer. You didn't see him any other time except during election season.
Well, sadly, in some ways, of course, it does come back to us as voters, though,
Yes.
that, and one of the things, well, a couple things we know about how people vote, if they vote at all, and unfortunately, there's a lot of people choose not to vote. But one is they vote for the party, even though the party might be quite useless, whichever
Mhm.
party it is, but they keep just doing it over and over. And the other thing is incumbency. This person's been there forever, so they have name recognition, so you just keep voting them in all the time. Um,
Yeah,
I
because you know what you're going to
once
get. That's why.
Yeah, I guess it's predictable, but on the other hand, it's so familiar. So I had I was did the color commentator thing for an election up here in Alberta some years ago, and in our province, you actually have, I think now we have like 87 representatives get elected. Anyway, I was asked to do I thought I'd do a background on all the people of this major party that got elected all the time. I think I follow politics pretty well. And I found there was about 35, 40 members of the governing party that had been elected two and three, four times. I had never heard of them. Like they just, in their constituency, people just kept voting for them all the time,
Yeah.
even though it wasn't clear they'd ever done anything. Certainly
Yeah.
not in the news.
Yeah. I find that fascinating too. I didn't really, you didn't really see it too much back in New York, but here I've noticed, you know, there were a lot more things to vote for as far as political offices here in Texas. There's a lot, which is great. I think is fantastic. I think that there should never be any kind of a political appointment for anything. I'm sorry. I don't think anyone should be able to say, well, I'm going to appoint this person to be a judge here and this person to be a judge there and that person to serve on this, that. I think everything should be done by vote of the people. It has its positives and negatives. I understand that. So, so hold off on sending me the emails about it. I understand. All right. There's plus sides and negatives to the whole thing. But I think there's more accountability when people are charged with the selection of their judges. Like here, we vote for our county judge. We vote for our judges in the city. We vote for those people. I was looking at the ballot when I went, because we just finished our primaries. And there are so many positions where people are running unopposed.
Mm-hmm.
And like, well, who are these people? I don't know who they are. I've never seen a campaign ad. I didn't even know they were running. It's crazy, and that goes to what you said about when you were talking about providing the color commentary on these things. Who are these people? Where do they stand for? But yet they're running unopposed. So what do? You hold your nose, and you and you tick the little box.
Mhm.
And that shouldn't be. It should not be that way. There, things need to change.
Yeah, and back to the whole thing of populism. One of the
Mhm.
reasons that populism, well, there's a number of reasons why populist parties start to arise. One is sometimes if there's been a war, and particularly if your side loses, then people aren't too happy with that.
Mhm.
Another thing is during economic recessions. So the economy goes down, people want to blame someone. So they figure, again, that term, the elites let us down. But the other thing is when the elite, whoever they are viewed as being corrupt, incompetent, and yet they've been in office for a long period of time. And so you get this kind of backlash against that,
Right.
where people get together and say, it's time to throw the bums out.
Unfortunately, though, it doesn't happen all that often because the quote unquote elites have the unlimited bankrolls. They buy their influence, they buy their votes. And I heard somebody earlier today on another talk show talking about this, and I'm not trying to steal anybody's thunder on this one. But the truth of the matter is, it just seems like more and more your votes are becoming less and less important. You know, that we're moving more towards an oligarchic type of government than a representative republic. And I purposely say that I don't say democracy because this is not a democracy.
Well, and in fact,
America.
interesting enough, you actually at Princeton back in, I think it was in '96, there was a couple of political scientists there who did a study, and they came out and got great press at the time. Said, the United States isn't a democracy the way it was set up by the founders. It is an oligarchy. There's a very few people who have the money and the influence, and they make things happen.
Right.
The one thing that, and it's creeping everywhere, but as you know, in the United States, the Citizens United decision, that the amount of money slushing into the system makes it very difficult for new voices to get in there. And so some of the way that politics, the parties are set up in the States, very difficult to set up a third party. I mentioned William Jennings Bryan. At that time, it was possible for Bryan in 1896 to create a third party, as they say. Different United States, money was totally different. There was, the Vanderbilts, but it wasn't like now. Very difficult to get a third party off the ground, to get a populist party off the ground.
Yeah.
And so because of the way the politics is structured and the amount of money in the system, pretty much anybody who wants to do anything inevitably has to say, I'm going to be either a Republican or I'm going to be a Democrat, because you can't create that third body outside of this, right?
Yeah.
You have to try to change things from within. And I suspect that's probably frustrating a lot of Americans who would like genuine change outside of those two parties.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you. And, look, you can look at a ballot and you'll see, or you can actually, I think you can go on to I think one of the government websites. I don't know if it's on the federal side or the state, local side, but you can go onto those websites and you can find there are many, many political parties, but none of them are taken seriously.
Nope.
None of them are ever really considered. And of course, you also have to look at the candidates that a lot of these political parties put forward. They're not exactly, on the board.
Well, and we see that here in Canada as well. I mean, it tends kind of the fringe characters who are, trying to do something. But yeah, until the party actually looks like it might be legitimate, it's hard to attract really good candidates. And of course, in the States, one of the things in terms of, say, the presidential elections is the electoral college. So you would almost have to start a third party from scratch that has a presence in all 50 states at once.
Correct.
Now, what's the odds of doing that when you have no money, no organization, and so again, these are structural impediments. to get to creating something that maybe a lot of Americans would say, hey, I'd really go for that, but legitimately or logically you can't do it.
It's very, very hard. I grew up. The first election I was able to vote in was to vote for Ronald Reagan's second term. All right, so I'm aging myself. I'm dating myself. So I've been a card carrying Republican since the 80s. I think I voted off my ticket, I think maybe twice in my life, because I felt the candidate was a better choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying presidential. I'm just saying local stuff.
Yeah.
State stuff, city stuff, because I just felt they were a better choice. Was I right? Not necessarily, but it's the way it is. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that the Republican Party is no longer the Republican Party that I came up with. Mm-hmm. And I look at myself more. I'm a like I say on my profile, I'm a conservatarian. So I have conservative values and conservative leanings, but I also have some libertarian ideas and libertarian leanings. So I try to. So that's the type of candidate that I look for now. Someone who has similar views.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, actually, in interesting, there's have been all kinds of polls about what ideology people have. One of the fastest growing ideological movements in the States is libertarianism.
Yeah.
And there's about 17% of Americans now actually would describe themselves that way. But, back to the notion of getting a new party off the ground. So one difference, and over the years, I've studied contrasts and comparisons with different countries, and Canada and the States is an obvious comparison. Mm-hmm. One of the things in Canada is that we actually have created over time a number of third parties that get off the ground.
They're actually viable parties.
Yeah, here in Western Canada over the years, we've actually created as a party, and I think it's because the structure and the impediments to getting a party off the ground, starting it from scratch, are not so great as in the United States trying to do it. And you can see other countries as well, France, Germany, Greece, the UK, where, again, there's not so many impediments in the structure that says, hey, this group wants to start something new. So
sometimes when I think about it in that regard, I don't know. Maybe it's just maybe I listen to Alex Jones too much. I don't know, but I love Alex Jones. I really do. He's great. Sometimes I really think that the uniparty is what it's really called here now. It's the uniparty. They have the system rigged to take care of themselves, and there really is no way for any other political party to get a foothold into anything. It's structured that way purposely, I think, and it's again going back to that oligarchic type of mentality.
Well, and again, without putting too fine a point on who is part of that elite, but this is the kind of thing that creates a stress in a system where at some point you wonder how much stress can a system take before a mass of people just simply say the system doesn't work for us anymore. It really is being directed by a fairly small group of people who are, preventing any kind of meaningful change here. And that's usually when you get kind of populist parties continue to grow, right? And emerge as a real challenger to the existing force.
Now, do you think that a lot of the populist movements that we see today are actually new, or are they just kind of repeating historic patterns?
Well, sometimes when you look at them, you can see that here is vestiges of past groups, right? So here in Western Canada, we had a party start up in the late 1980s called the Reform Party. There are offshoots of that now that clearly many of the same actors, the same ideas, they don't go under the same name, but they're very much kind of offspring of that. Mm-hmm. So you can see those kind of similarities. even some of the populist parties of the 1930s, some of their ideas keep kind of coming back again. They get resuscitated and someone else carries it on again. One interesting thing, though, about in terms of the stresses and strains is, and I've thought about this a lot over the last few years, maybe it's just that the large state structures simply are not able to accommodate all of the stresses, strains, and fractures in society any longer. I mean, countries are really complex things. We're not talking about a country of 200 years ago or a small little fiefdom someplace. There are a lot of things now that governments are being asked to do, and maybe it's just not possible. The sheer size and complexity of the issues has gone beyond what the party systems as a whole can actually deal with at this point.
Interesting. I agree with you. I think I agree with you on that. I've said for a while, and I'll continue to say it too, is that I think a country like the United States is too big to be ruled by just one particular uniparty that we have, or a two-party system. I don't know what the future looks like as far as the country goes. I've read many essays on these things. I read a really interesting book, and actually went to look to see if I can get another copy. I wanted to buy it for a friend of mine, and it's not in print anymore. It's called Rethinking the American Union for the 21st Century. It's a collection of essays that basically talk about, the possibility that at some point during the course of this century, that these states united might end up breaking up into smaller. And I'm going to use a word. I know people are going to go, that word, confederacies. Going to break up into smaller confederacies.
Yeah, it's
not a horrible word.
I think it's worthwhile thinking about. I mean, again, having studied many of these places, one of the things I've said to people is, we have a way of thinking about states as though they've been there and they last forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you think back about previous state structures. Think the Austrian-Hungarian Empire that falls apart at the end of the First World War.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, on a couple of occasions, I traveled through the former Yugoslavia. Kind of a dull little place. The weather was never very great, but it seemed to function its own way. And then all of a sudden, in a matter of years, not only does it fall apart, but they're shooting each other. And people who had never remembered they were Croats suddenly remember they're Croats or the Serbs or something else.
Right. I remember that.
So we tend to assume that things will last forever. The Soviet Union, right? But it's not impossible that a place like the United States or Canada or any number of other places could suddenly, because the stresses become so great that they kind of go their own way. And hopefully it's amicable, kind of like Czechoslovakia breaking up, right?
Right.
But there are times too when places break up and it's not as friendly as you'd like. So yeah, it's good to keep in mind the fact that these things are human creations, political creations, and those kind of things are subject to stresses over time.
Exactly. One of the ways that I like to kind of describe the U.S. is I use the European Union as an example.
Yeah.
When the United States was founded, it was 13 individual states. Now, the word state also means country. It means its own nation state. So here are 13 countries going back to the founding of the country, 13 individual separate sovereign countries compacted together for very specific things. And of course, it has grown over time. And I think people have lost sight of the fact that this is not one nation. All right, it's not one nation state. This is a union of individual sovereign countries, states that have compacted together for mutual defense and trade. That's the main things. That's really it.
Yeah.
And it has just grown so much. So naturally, over time, it's going to get too big to be one central government controlling everything. These things are eventually going to fall apart. It happens. It's historical and it's natural. It's not a horrible thing to take place.
Yeah, you can have you can imagine a kind of an umbrella state that kind of coordinates things in the big picture. But you're right. Think of all the things that go into that. There's transportation, there's
Hmm.
healthcare, there's education, linguistic issues, right? That the United States at some point, I know in Texas, California, we have actually an officially bilingual country in
Hmm.
Canada. It's not that everybody speaks French and English, but at least at the level of federal institutions, people have to be able to speak both languages in order to communicate with citizens, right?
Hmm.
But is the United States or at least some parts of it, going to be bilingual, fully bilingual? I mean, officially, because the population is so large that you have to accommodate that, right?
Correct.
So I know there's been studies over the years talking about the different regions of the United States. California is almost its own region. In
Hmm.
fact, it would be I think, the sixth or seventh largest economy in the world if it was a separate state. You have the southern states with a distinctive history, culture, everything. You have parts off to the northeast that is kind of distinctive. Anyway, you can imagine there's about 4 or 5 different regions of the United States that are held together: patriotism, trade, transport, a whole bunch of other things,
Right.
but also are very different.
Yes.
So your point that what happens 10, 15, 20 years from now, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. A
And
cookie.
as a sociologist, I want to be around to watch it.
Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah, Texas is the eighth largest economy in the world if it wasn't part of the United States.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and interestingly, side note here. This is a sidebar. This is free. Um, you know, Texas has Texit. You're familiar with that?
No, is that like Wexit? Is that or
Yes.
Brexit? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And there's also a
Okay.
CalExit.
Okay.
Now, here in Texas, it has gained a lot of momentum, especially over the previous administration.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's why we have the
Mm-hmm.
Texas independence flag.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually part of an organization called the Texas Nationalist Movement that is working through the legislative process to get a referendum to have a vote
Mm-hmm.
of the people on whether or not we want to stay part of the United States or not. And it's actually gaining a lot of traction, it's gaining a lot of ground, and there's a lot more discussion about it. There's a lot more positive discussion about it. And I remember not, I think it was, I forget how long ago it was, but there was a poll that was done in Texas, and it was like almost 60% of the population that was polled said that they would vote for independence.
Interesting.
And the funny thing is actually is that California is probably closer to it than Texas is, believe it or not.
Mm. I mean, what would be interesting is, of course, well, two things. One, how people answer on a poll is not necessarily how they would actually
Of
vote
course.
if there's a referendum. That tends to go down a lot because it concentrates the mind, as they say.
Hmm.
Uh,
No,
but
of course. No,
but
absolutely.
the other thing would be the response of the other states, right? So we have a somewhat similar debate going on in Canada. At one time or another, we had a couple of referendums on Quebec, who have quite legitimate, claims to being a very distinct part of Canada, linguistically, historically, etc. But we also have right now efforts to get a referendum on separating in the province of Alberta. Now, at best, polls suggest there's about 20% of the people would say they want to. The ones who don't want to are vociferously opposed to the idea. But there is always a minority of people who would say who feel their identity, their sense of oppression or whatever, they want to go their own way.
Mhm.
Almost every confederation in the world at some point or another has faced this. Scotland in the UK went
Right.
through it. So yeah, France, Greece, again, lots of these places have gone through it. But there's always a group who say, I think I want to try something different. We'd be better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to deal with it.
Well, just think of it like this: when the United States was founded, the majority of the citizens in the United States at the time, the colonies, they weren't in favor of separating from England.
No,
but
no.
it still happened. So you never know. You never know.
Well, some of that comes down to, again, the leaderships and how stridently they want to fight for their vision. But you're absolutely right. There was probably about only a third of the people in the colonies
That's right.
wanted to leave. About a third wanted to stay, and the other third wanted to go tend their sheep.
Yeah, exactly.
And
want to be left alone.
Wanted nothing to do with what the other 66.6% were talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Just leave me alone. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just looked at the clock. I didn't realize that we've been gabbing here about an hour on this, and we didn't even get to your books.
Well,
so,
it's been a lot of fun.
But do you want to hang out for just a couple more minutes? We can. Let's plug your books here. Let's get some of that done.
Sure.
So tell us about your most recent project, because I am trying to pronounce it as I'm looking at it, and I can't do it again. So.
Safarname.
Safarname. Okay, I was close.
It's actually a Farsi or Urdu word meaning journey. And what it is, it's actually going, when it comes out, and it's supposed to be out in April. It's been a rather long-suffering project, I say. But it's tracing my own trip across what was called the hippie trail at that time, kind of a trail that hippies made from Istanbul to India. So I went through Afghanistan and Iran and Turkey, all these places. And so it's partly my account, because I actually kept really quite good notes at the time. But it's also, as a sociologist, an exploration of why did so many people do it. So there was probably 2 to 3 million Westerners, backpackers, who made that trip. So it's an attempt to explain why so many young people decide to do that at that time. So it's kind of it's like a cultural, historical examination of a time and place that's not going to ever happen again, especially given everything that's happened in the Middle East. It'll never happen again. But so it's a sociological, but also very much a kind of personal account of my own experiences. Long time writing it.
I never would have thought there were hippies in Istanbul and Turkey.
No, of course not.
I never would have thought that, to be honest with you. I kind of thought that was more of a Western thing than.
No, it was kind of like the place to go, on your way to, I don't know, finding nirvana or whatever, once you got to India.
I get it. Yeah, the Eastern religions. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That was appeal for certainly a lot of people at that time.
Yeah, because the hippie movement did follow along a lot with a lot of the Eastern religious traditions.
Right. It was pretty strong. So I write about that actually in the book, the variations of people I met who were going off to find enlightenment or whatever. Going to New Delhi or down to swim or dip their toes in the Ganges or something like that. So. Yeah.
Dangerous, but yeah.
Yeah. You want all your shots before you do anything like that.
Absolutely. So, but what inspired you to write that?
Well, again, I've always really been interested in travel, period. And I had made this trip before I ever went to university. So I was traveling for over a year. And at some point I decided, hey, I've got all these great notes. I've studied these places. It's about time I actually use these notes for some kind of purpose. So I went back, and the book itself actually isn't just my account. I actually interviewed 48 people, Americans, Canadians, a couple of Germans, a lot of British folks, some Australians, wow. Kind of a cross section of people who had done the trip. And, to make it kind of a global analysis. And it was a lot of fun talking to them. Also brought back a lot of memories, but it was just one of those things that, as I said, as a sociologist, it seemed to be it was an important story to tell, but personally, because I had done it, it also was something that was important for me to go back to again, something I had done in my childhood or my 20s at least.
That's it. Now you also do. You also write poetry books, correct?
Yeah, so I'm sort of recently retired. It'll be actually 3 years ago in June. I've spent my time since then traveling, still writing a lot. I've been to Southeast Asia both the last 2 years in November for periods of time, and that's been really interesting. But along the way, I wrote a couple of put together a couple of poetry books. I don't know about you, but when I was a teenager, I wrote poetry, really bad poetry, so I would never publish. I don't want it seen. But in retirement or getting close to it, I came back to it and I thought, I think I want to go back to kind of original roots of stuff I was interested in. It's like writing music or something, when you're a
Sure.
teenager. So I brought out two books in December, actually. One's called Poetry Without Borders, and it's kind of bit reflective. It's kind of nice, lots of rhyming stuff in here. So people who love rhyming poetry, they love this one. The other one is much grimmer because we're living in pretty grim times, actually. Pestilence, climate change, war, you name it. Anyway, it's called War and Other Inconveniences. And I just love the irony of the title, as though all these other things are just minor inconveniences.
Right.
Anyway, so that's a little bit heavier of a book, but I brought both of them out in December, and I've been promoting them ever since. And so it's it's fun after writing any number of academic books to suddenly,
I'm sure,
do my talents in a different direction. So. Yeah,
I'm sure it is. I mean, the academic stuff is pretty heavy. This is just more emotional. This is more just to get it out of your soul.
Yeah, that's the nice thing. I mean, one of the things in academia, quite often, you're kind of stifled from using, for example, just adjectives, but also you're supposed to be kind of this distant person writing about something. You're writing objectively. You're not supposed to let your personal opinions enter into it. But this sort of allowed me to let another part of myself out writing this poetry. So that's kind of a nice thing about this.
So when can we expect the
Safarname?
Safarname, yes.
I'll save you. Yeah, it is. I'm told it is being advertised actually by the publisher. It's been in their brochures for the last while. It's supposed to be out sometime probably in April.
Okay.
And when it comes back, for sure, we should get together again.
Yes, I would love
talk about that book more in depth. And anything else you want to talk about.
Absolutely. I would absolutely love that. Maybe I'll get a copy of the book too, so I could have an informed discussion on it.
Sounds good.
So do you see any connections between your travel experiences and the way you analyze societies and political cultures?
Oh yeah, for sure. I've often said to people that I think education, travel is the best education anyone can have. And in fact, I think we would have far fewer problems in the world if more people actually traveled and saw they share more things in common with people elsewhere than what they think or are told.
Yeah.
And so before I ever went to university, I'd already traveled to Europe a couple of times. I'd been to the Canary Islands. I'd been to Greece a few times. I'd been to Israel. And subsequently, I ended up also traveling to India on a second occasion and now to Southeast Asia. So
nice.
Travel is a wonderful education if you keep your eyes open and you genuinely want to meet the people who are there and learn something about them. Get beyond the facade or what you're told about people, but actually really try to understand where they're coming from. So I wish more young people would take advantage of that.
Yeah, I kind of regret not traveling more when I was younger. I had so many opportunities to go. Like I had opportunity to go to Italy and to get caught up with family members that I never met. And,
Yeah.
I never took advantage of it. And I kind of wish I did. It's not too late. I mean, I can still do it. I just
Not too late at all. Yeah.
it's just I wish I would have done it when I was younger. I think it would have been an incredibly eye-opening experience at a younger age to experience those things. Now I'm just going to go for the food. To be honest,
Hey, listen, I of all the countries, one of my favorite ones for sure is Greece. I've been to Greece probably 10, 12 times. Short story here, actually. I had been to Greece several times before I ever got married, and I was going to Greece for a conference, and my wife said, invisible ink on the marriage contract, it says anytime I go to Greece, I have to take her. So now she goes to Greece with me. But
Nice.
anyway, I love the people, I love the language, I love the food, and the water, the music. So
Yeah,
it's a great
absolutely.
place to go.
So, Trevor, this was great. I really appreciate the conversation tonight. It was a lot of fun. Learned a few things as well along the way here. And but before we wrap this whole thing up, just one last question for you. So, who is someone that you respect right now, and what are they doing that inspires you?
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. Can't think of any particular politicians at the moment.
That's good.
Yeah. Let's table that to the next time we're on. It'll probably be either a writer or maybe a musician or something, but an artist. But
All right, perfect. We'll hold on to that one. So, where can people go to find out more about you and about your work, sir?
Yeah, please, contact me. You can send me an email. I'm on it all the time. I'm very open to people asking me questions. I'll answer them as truthfully and fully as I can. Or I am on Facebook, and again, people can find me on there. Any and all of the books I have are available on Amazon. You can also find those really easily. So, please keep in touch. It's been great fun talking to you, Joe.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. And I know I have your Facebook page and your email address in the show notes. If you have a link to your Amazon listings, you can send that over to me also, and I can add it later on.
Sure, I'll do that. Otherwise, they can just look up the titles of the books on Amazon. They'll find them real quick.
Perfect. Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Dr. Trevor Harrison, man, thank you so much. This was great. Really appreciate it. So I'm going to put you backstage, and I'll come back to you in a couple minutes while I close this thing up. All right. All right, folks. Trevor Harrison, what a great conversation. I know I fumbled a lot of my words tonight. I got a little hung up on things, but again, the mind was working faster than the mouth, and then sometimes the other way around. So I appreciate your patience and your tolerance in that one. All right. Well, I don't want to keep them waiting for too long, so let's get through our little wrap up here. Let's do this. Well, folks, as you know, it is tax season here, and taxation is theft, just to remind you. But the folks over at Diamond Dynasty Tax Group Legacy are here in Eagle Pass, and they're looking to help you out and work on your taxes for you. These folks are great. They did my taxes for me when I purchased the asylum and did all the renovations here and built the studio and did all that stuff. They took a stack of receipts and invoices about that big, and they condensed it down. They got it all worked out into my taxes, and they really. I know it's a tagline for them, but they really did minimize all the stress. They absolutely did. They did a fantastic job with it. And of course, we got the best possible refund we possibly could. So if you want to check them out, give them a call at 830-867-7106. It's 830-867-7106. It's Diamond Dynasty Tax Group Legacy. And make sure that when you talk to them, you let them know that you heard it here on the Joe Rooz Show. All right. And again, taxation is theft. Remember that. All right. Shout outs to our executive producers, Wayne Rankin, Rosanna Rankin, Carolina Jimenez, Marissa Lee, and of course, the inestimable anonymous Angela. Folks, these guys, they're so valuable to what we're doing here with this show. They donated their time, their talent, their treasure, and they've done spectacular work with us. And I am incredibly thankful to have each and every one of them as partners with the show here. And if you want to find out more about how you can help support the show, just head over to our website, joerooz.com/support. That's joerooz.com/support. You can find out all the different ways you can help us out, from one-time donations to recurring donations to signing up as an associate producer, an executive producer, or a producer of the show. You can do all of that stuff right there on our website. You can donate cryptocurrencies if you like. Many, many ways you can help support the show, all right there on the support page. So please head over there and check it out. All right, look, tonight's conversation reminds us that politics rarely changes overnight. Most of the focus shaping our world, most of the forces shaping our world, economic anxiety, cultural change, distrust in institutions, build slowly over time. Whether you agree with the conclusions or not, understanding why people feel the way they do about politics is critical if we want a healthy, I hate to use the word, but democracy. All right. Populism, polarization, political frustration didn't appear out of nowhere. It comes from real tensions inside a society. The challenge that we have going forward is figuring out whether those tensions will lead to deeper division or to meaningful change. That's something that we have to decide as a people. All right. And on that, I think that should be just about all I've got for you for tonight. So if you don't mind, head over to the website, joerooz.com. Leave a message for us. Let us know what you think. Any questions, comments, cares, or concerns. Once again, thank you to Dr. Trevor Harrison for being with us tonight. And if you have any questions or comments for him, send them on over. We'll get it to him for sure. All right, folks. I think that's it. Make Texas independent again. Go podcasting. Keep a steady stride. And more importantly, keep talking. We'll see you tomorrow night, folks. Have a great one.